It started as a normal day for James, a retired black veteran who had served his country with pride. He walked into a local restaurant, hoping for nothing more than a warm meal and a moment of peace. But instead of being welcomed, he was met with cold stares and hostility. Out of nowhere, he was asked to leave. No explanation, no justification, just outright rejection. Shocked and humiliated, James quietly exited, but what he did next left everyone speechless. Instead of anger, James turned to action in a way no one could have anticipated. His response not only challenged the injustice he faced, but also brought an entire community together in ways no one saw coming. Stay tuned as we dive into James' incredible story, a story of resilience, dignity, and how one man's quiet strength sparked a ripple effect that astounded everyone around him. James walked home that evening, his mind racing with a mix of emotions: hurt, disbelief, and frustration. This wasn't the first time he had faced discrimination, but something about this moment felt different. As he sat down in his small living room, surrounded by memories of his years in the service, he couldn't help but reflect on the irony. He had put his life on the line for a country that still treated him as if he didn't belong. But James wasn't the type to let anger consume him. He started thinking about how he could turn this painful experience into something meaningful. He pulled out a notebook, jotting down ideas, brainstorming ways to respond, not with retaliation, but with purpose. Meanwhile, whispers of the incident began spreading around town. Some people supported the restaurant's actions, while others were outraged. Little did anyone know, James was quietly working on something that would soon grab everyone's attention. Word of what happened to James began circulating on social media after a bystander shared a brief video of the incident. The clip showed James leaving the restaurant, his face calm but visibly hurt. It didn't take long for the video to gain traction, sparking heated debates online. Some called for a boycott of the restaurant, while others argued that there had to be more to the story. James, however, stayed silent, refusing to speak out publicly about what had happened. Meanwhile, James' neighbors began rallying around him. A local pastor visited, offering support, while a young woman from down the street stopped by with a homemade meal. But what caught everyone by surprise was when James himself started inviting people into his home, not to dwell on the injustice, but to discuss ways to address discrimination in their community. The question on everyone's mind was clear: what was James planning, and why was he so calm? As days passed, the buzz around the incident only grew louder. People started gathering outside the restaurant, some holding signs calling for accountability, while others defended the business, claiming there must have been a misunderstanding. Reporters showed up, asking questions that the restaurant owner refused to answer. Tensions in the town were rising, and it seemed like everyone had taken a side. Through it all, James stayed quiet, refusing interviews and brushing off requests for comments. Instead, he focused on something bigger. Late at night, the lights in his house glowed as James worked tirelessly on a plan. He reached out to local leaders, civil rights advocates, and even a few veterans he had served with. Bit by bit, James was piecing together something no one could have expected. Rumors swirled. Was he planning a protest, a lawsuit? People speculated endlessly, but James kept his intentions close to his chest. All anyone knew was that something big was coming. The day finally arrived when James announced a community meeting at the local town hall. Flyers went up overnight, and social media posts spread quickly, inviting everyone to hear what he had to say. Curiosity was at an all-time high, with people wondering what James had planned. On the day of the event, the hall was packed. People stood shoulder to shoulder, some eager to support James, others skeptical but intrigued. Even the restaurant owner, sitting quietly in the back, had shown up, his face unreadable. As James walked to the front, the room fell silent. He looked out at the crowd, his calm presence commanding their attention. But just as he began to speak, a surprising announcement interrupted him. A local journalist rushed in, revealing new information. Another former customer had come forward with a similar story about being treated unfairly at the same restaurant. The tension in the room shifted, and all eyes turned back to James. What would he say now, with his shocking twist adding even more weight to the moment? James stood there for a moment, letting the journalist's revelation sink in. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, tension filling the air. Finally, he raised his hand, signaling for silence. When the room quieted, he began to speak. "I didn't call you all here to focus on one restaurant or one incident," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I called you here to talk about change, not just for me, but for all of us." To everyone's surprise, James unveiled his plan. He had started a community fund to support initiatives promoting inclusivity and equal treatment in local businesses. The fund would offer workshops, diversity training, and grants to help small business owners build fairer practices. Then came the unexpected twist. James revealed that a group of veterans, including some he had served with, had already pledged donations to kickstart the project. The crowd erupted in applause, but before the moment could settle, James turned to the restaurant owner in the back. "Your business has a choice," James said, his tone still calm. "You can continue as you are, or you can partner with us and be part of the solution." The room held its breath, waiting for the owner's response. The room was silent as the restaurant owner slowly stood. He looked nervous but spoke clearly. "I've made mistakes," he admitted, his voice shaking slightly. "If there's a way to do better, I want to learn." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd, but James simply nodded and extended his hand. The two shook hands in front of everyone, a moment of reconciliation that no one had expected. From that day on, the restaurant became the first business to participate in James' community program. Workshops were held, difficult conversations were started, and slowly, trust began to rebuild. What began as an act of discrimination turned into a movement that united the town in ways no one had imagined. As James walked home that night, he couldn't help but smile. He had taken his pain and turned it into purpose, proving that even the smallest acts of courage can spark lasting change.